Hello everyone. Hello. It's a great pleasure to be here. It is by far the coziest conference, crypto conference, and not only crypto conference, but ever conference I've ever been. So yeah, today we will talk about the thing that you see on the slide. How Lido makes Ethereum validation more accessible. But first of all, let me introduce myself. So my name is Dmitry, and I'm contributing to Lido since the very beginning of 2022. And since the middle of 2023, me and my team, we are working on a project called CSM, or Community Staking Module, which is this thing that I'm going to talk today, the thing that makes Ethereum validation way better. But before we start talking about how it makes Ethereum validation better, easier, and more accessible, let's first of all talk about Ethereum validation in general. Please raise your hands. Who knows about Ethereum validation? Who think that he can operate Ethereum validator on his own? Okay, not that much, meaning that the upcoming information might be useful and pretty interesting for you. So let's start with Ethereum in general. So Ethereum in general, you've probably heard of it. The unique feature of Ethereum is that it is an evolving ecosystem, and it is by far the only major project to perform transition from proof of work to proof of stake. And that's why we are talking about Ethereum validation and not Ethereum mining at the moment. The actual transition happened in September 2022, and yes, now Ethereum is secured by a proof of stake. It's not that, unfortunately, the proof of stake mechanism in Ethereum is not that fascinating as in Cosmos, for example, or in Polkadot. So there's a room for improvement, and we will learn today how. Ethereum itself is actually made out, it's not a single blockchain, it's two blockchains. The first one is execution layer. This is the layer or a blockchain that most of you probably interact with. When you do a transaction on Ethereum, when you interact with smart contracts or doing swaps on AMM, all this lives on the execution layer. But to allow for this transition from proof of work to proof of stake, an additional layer and additional blockchain was added called consensus layer, or also known as beacon chain. And this is the place, and this is the blockchain where validators actually operate, where consensus is reached, and after reaching consensus, new blocks are added to the execution layer. Now let's talk about typical setup of Ethereum validator. So Ethereum validator as a software, it's not a self-sufficient thing, it's more of a sidecar for the Ethereum node. And you can connect as many validators as you want to a single node, and the node itself will be responsible for interacting with the rest of the network. If we will take a bit closer look, we will see that, you remember, two layers, execution and consensus. So actually you need two clients or two nodes, execution layer node and consensus layer node. And if you want to run consensus layer node, you need to get it connected to the execution layer. And on top of that, you can add validator client or many validator clients and the MEV boost software, again, sidecar to the sidecar, if you want. So that's the typical setup. So at the end of the day, you need at least 3 pieces of software or maybe 4 to run Ethereum validator. Okay. But the problem is that validator is probably the most misleading term in the whole Ethereum. Can you guess why? Any ideas? Why validator is such a bad term for this sidecar?
Because they not really validate.
Exactly. Validators on Ethereum are not responsible for validation. It's a consensus layer node responsibility to validate blocks, to select, fork, and to communicate with the rest of the network. And the validator itself is responsible for proposing new blocks, attesting chain state, and reporting slashings. And you will probably say, wow, okay. But why it is so? How validator cannot validate? It actually cannot. It validates, because to run a validator, you need to get it connected to the consensus layer node. So it allows for a wonderful thing. If you want to contribute to the Ethereum network security, to the Ethereum network robustness, you can simply run consensus layer node, and that's it. And it will also validate blocks even without a validator. But if you will run validator on top of it, you will get this extra things. But what you need to run consensus layer node and validator. As I've mentioned, to run a consensus layer node, you don't need anything except for hardware and software. That's it. No deposits, no nothing, and you can already, right now, without any funds, using only your hardware or virtual machine, setting a software and contribute to the robustness of the Ethereum network. However, if you want to contribute to the development of the network, to production of new blocks, and to growth of the network, you need to run a validator. And to run a validator, you need exactly, precisely 32 ETH per each validator instance. There's an ongoing discussion in the Ethereum community to increase this number or to make it variable, starting from 32 up to 248. But still, the minimal value is 32 ETH. And let's be honest, 32 ETH is hell ton of money, no matter where you are from. Even if you live in Switzerland or in the United States, or I don't know. 32 ETH, that's a lot compared to the cost of a machine or stuff like that. So it brings us to the very first problem of Ethereum validation. It is ridiculously expensive. But do we have any other? Yeah, let's find out. Let's talk about validator duties. At its core, validator is responsible for three main things. It is responsible for block proposals, attestations, and sync committee participation. With the block proposals, everything is simple as hell. There is a fixed distance between blocks. It is called slots. So once your validator is selected to produce a block, you need to do all the duties. So you need to build a block, you need to propagate it over the network within 12 seconds. That's it about this duty. Attestations is a more complicated thing, but the gist of attestation is each epoch, each 32 slots, your validator is responsible for sharing his own vision of the chain to the rest of the network, so that the other participants of the network, taking your vision into account, can decide what fork to choose or if the finality is reached or not. So it's pretty crucial for the proper functioning of the network. So not only producing blocks, but also agreeing with the others that produce blocks, they are fine, and which is the fine version. And the last duty here is sync committee participation. Again, it's even more complicated, and it is needed for a simple thing. At the moment, Ethereum network has a size of around 1 million validators, or maybe a bit more at the moment. And if each block on a consensus layer would include all the attestations related to this block directly, it would result in enormous blocks, like extremely huge blocks. And it will not allow for a small or light client separation. So the duty of a sync committee is to aggregate these votes and to include a small aggregate into blocks so that the block will be lightweight, however, the data will be reversible. And for fulfilling duties, validators get rewards. So that's why you actually stake. You put something at a stake, you fulfill duties, and you get rewards. The breakdown of the rewards is the following. Approximately 70% of rewards came from fulfillment of the consensus layer duties, the things that we've just discussed. So if you are producing blocks in time, submitting attestations in time, for sure, attestations that are treated correct by the network, and you are participating in a sync committee, it means that you will get this 70% of rewards. It's super stable, it's super predictable, it directly depends on how you perform. So, super fine here. But the second part, and if you've been at this audience yesterday, when Paul was talking about MEV, you probably know that the execution layer rewards is a hell of a lottery. Because average validator would produce from 2 to 4 blocks a year, meaning that you will be able to get this execution layer rewards only 2 to 4 times a year. However, still, on average for the year, it's 30% of rewards. So you can assume that it's way more per one action than consensus layer rewards. But the problem is you never know beforehand how much of the execution layer rewards you would get. You might be super lucky, and by the time it is your turn to produce a block, the network activity will be enormous. Gas fees will be super high, priority fees would skyrocket, and also juicy MEV from this relay, and you will get, I don't know, 10 ETH at one block. It is possible. But most of the time, you will get as less as 0.001 ETH, and you will be so unhappy. So that brings us to the second problem of Ethereum validation. It's the volatility of rewards. Even if you and your friend both started running Ethereum validators at the same day, after a year, if you were not lucky enough while your friend was super lucky, the difference in your rewards might be super significant. But on top of rewards, since when you put this 32 ETH at stake, you've committed to fulfill duties, if you are not fulfilling them, you will be penalized by the network. And there's three main types of penalties. Penalties for missed attestations, for missed sync committee participation, and for slashing. And the main thing here is that for sure, slashing is the result of a significant rule violation. So if your validator is slashed, you will be ejected and no longer eligible to participate, and you will face significant penalties. That's understandable. Like you violated rules. You're almost a criminal on the Ethereum network. But with the missed attestation and with the missed sync committee participation, the situation is the following. Even a small power outage or internet outage or just small issue on your side will result in not only in reduction of your rewards, but also in penalties on top of it. And that's the third problem of Ethereum validation. It's penalties for even small outages. It's not a typical thing, I would say, for the proof-of-stake networks. Take Avalanche as example. If you are validating Avalanche, the only thing you need to do is to maintain uptime above 80% or so. So small outages has nothing to do with reduction in your rewards or with penalties. No, you just need to be like, okay, and that's it. While on Ethereum, even being offline for an hour or for half of a day will be noticeable in your rewards. And we have one additional thing. When I told you about 32 ETH, I noticed that some of you were looking at me like, hey man, we're talking about staking, and there's a thing called delegated staking. Like in any chain, you need a lot of money to run a validator. Why don't you just use money from delegates? And the problem is that Ethereum does not have such a feature. There is no thing as delegation on the protocol level. So the only way for the delegator to give his stake to the node operator is not by using the network or the core protocol, but is by communicating directly with the node operator. So making an off-chain agreement about, okay, I'll give you the money, what you will give me back, can I be sure that you will give it back, and so on and so forth. There's a slight solution here called staking protocols. And Lido is one of the staking protocols, namely liquid staking protocol. So staking protocols, they allow for a delegation in some form, but the main problem is that the majority of the staking protocols, they are permissionless for delegators, so anyone can stake your ETH with Lido, for example. Super cool. But not anyone can be node operator with Lido at the moment. Because node operators, they have to pass this selection process. They need to have a proven track record. They need to be best in the industry to be allowed to operate this delegate stake. And that brings us to the problem number 4. Yeah, no delegation at its core, no native delegation, while the other forms of delegation that do exist, they are, I wouldn't say that they are okay. And now, when we know all these 4 issues, so okay, we've managed to find 32 ETH. Great. we can live with the fact that we will be penalized even for a small outage. We are okay with the fact that our rewards will look like this. So we can never predict them. And we are okay with the fact that there's no delegation. And we decided to run a validator on Ethereum. Now, if we are not using a third-party software, but going full hardcore on Ethereum, we will face a super complicated UX. So you need to be not an expert, but you need to have at least a degree in computer science to understand all the stuff around validation, to be able to run it. Or you can use third-party software. Yeah, that's true. But if you're going hardcore, the hardcore UX is really bad. So we have these 5 problems. Again, let's walk through them one more time. Ethereum validation, native validation, is expensive. Rewards are volatile. Penalties, even for a small outage, being offline for 2 hours will get you penalties. No native delegation, and the UX is pretty challenging. Now let's find out how it might be resolved and how Lido CSM resolves it. We will start with a delegation. And yes, a huge disclaimer, it is still not a full-featured delegation, again, like we have in Cosmos. But it is way better than what we have by default from the Ethereum network. So the gist is, with CSM, anyone can become a validator, and he can put as less as 2 to 4 ETH. The final number is to be decided because CSM is under development. And the rest will be delegated from the STETH holders, so from people who want to stake with Lido but don't want to run a validator. And that resolves 2 issues, basically. So now, validation is not that expensive because 4 or 2 ETH it's way better. It's way more affordable than 32 ETH. I mean, most of you would probably be able to get at least 2 ETH. I mean, it's not that great. And delegation, yes, and a delegation in a form that you are not only getting this low entry barrier, but you're also getting fees on the delegated stake, which is pretty interesting. Moving next, rewards. As we've discussed before, the rewards, they are volatile. And the Ethereum protocol, it distributes rewards to each validator independently, depending on their performance, luck, and so on and so forth. So let's move back to this example with you and your friend. So you both started validating Ethereum on one day, on the January the 1st, 2023, for example. And now it's January 1st, 2024. Your friend, he was super lucky. He's so inspired by Ethereum validation. He's saying, oh my God, for this year, I earned a full 1 ETH. No, even more, like 4 ETH, for example. Yeah. And you're like, oh, I only got 1. Because I only got consensus layer rewards. I produced only 2 blocks, and both of them were with such a small reward. And now you feel unhappy, while your friend feels super happy. But how it might be resolved? It might be resolved in a simple way. Any validator operating on behalf of Lido, using this Lido delegation and community staking module, would not get rewards directly from the protocol. But instead, the protocol will transfer rewards to the Lido smart contract, and then these rewards would be transferred in averaged portions to each validator, meaning that imagine another case. So you and your friend, instead of running a native Ethereum validation, you've decided to go for Lido, with Lido, to validate with Lido. And then at the end of the year, you're both happy because in total, your income is 5 ETH, and now it's divided equally. So you and your friend, you both have 2.5 ETH, which is great, which is not that great as 4 ETH for sure, but you both feel okay, and you don't need to worry about luck. This is amazing. And that resolves the problem with the volatile rewards. But you will probably ask, okay, in your example, both me and my friend, we were operating well. we are so responsible. But what if my friend is a bad boy and he's not responsible? He's running a validator, I don't know, on his coffee machine and not on a proper hardware. Instead of using proper connection, he's using his neighbor's Wi-Fi that he's stolen. And what's going to be now? In this case, would we both get same rewards? For sure not. But the thing is that the difference in performance might occur not only due to the fact that your friend is super irresponsible or irreliable. No. There might be things like blackouts, like internet outage, like your personal circumstances, natural disasters, a lot of things. But all of these things, on a high scale, they can be considered as a small outage. And to allow for this small outage, while still penalizing those who are doing bad and running a validator on a coffee machine, there's a performance threshold within CSM. So if, for a frame, the length of the frame is around a month, you've been performing above the threshold, meaning that you can have a power outage for a half a day or a day. It wouldn't affect your rewards. You would still be above this line, and you will get the same average reward. So both of you are still happy. But this friend, this one, running validator on a coffee machine, he will not get rewards on the delegated part of stake. So it resolves the fourth issue. Now, instead of penalties for even a small outage, we have a leeway for small performance outages. And yeah, I think that's good. Moving on, the last problem, UX. Yes. You might say that, okay, there's tons of tools, tons of hardware, software, dApp Node, Ethereum, Sedge, a lot of pieces of software that we are using to run validator, and it's super easy and smooth. That's true. But the thing is, the coolest thing about CSM is that with these integrations, by working with these partners, Lido is available to offer you the same smooth user experience with your preferred tool. So either you're using dApp Node or eNode or Stereo, you would be able to keep using it even with the validator that you already have, set up all the preparations within 3 clicks, and join Lido. So it allows for a wonderful experience here that you don't need to switch. You can simply use the tool that you prefer to run everything with CSM. And again, as I've mentioned, by far, Lido DAO supported 3 projects, dApp Node, eNode, and Stereo, with grants to develop these integrations that will go live pretty soon, together with CSM, I hope. And that resolves the last issue. So what we have, again, for native Ethereum validation, tons of problems. What we have for CSM, tons of solutions. And this whole list makes CSM your best friend in Ethereum validation. Because with CSM, it's cheap to enter. It's easy to get missing stake. The rewards are smooth. You have a leeway for a performance outages, and for sure you have the best UX in crypto. So once CSM will go live on testnet within 2 or 3 months, mainnet this autumn, make sure to at least check it out. If you are a technical geek and you want to learn more, and not only my marketing shit that I'm selling you here, and you want to dive into hardcore technical details, make sure to check out the research forum thread. There's a lot of details there, technical descriptions, architecture, all that stuff. Yeah. I'll wait for a second until you scan, because I have a bit more QR codes for you. And if you want to be in the first cohort of people who will be early adopters of CSM, who will be able to test it on a mainnet in the very first row, make sure to claim this auth. It's a POAP-like thingy, collectible. And some say that you get points when you collect it, but I don't know for sure. Some say. Yeah, and that's it. Thank you so much. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions in Telegram if you have them, but the best way to ask questions is right here, right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We had a great talk. Do we have any questions? Yes.
Here is a lot of interesting happens with the Lido together with SSV network, together with OBL. Can you maybe highlight several moments about this increasing level of the decentralization of the Lido?
Yeah, sure. So as you might have heard, at the moment, the ongoing project is called Simple DVT, and this amazing guy sitting here, his name is William, and he is responsible for all that magic. Yeah, so with Simple DVT, Lido increased the number of node operators by, I don't know, super many percents, and onboarded community stakers for the first time ever. The CSM is a next step. Is a step that allows anyone to join without any curation, without any pre-selection. You only need to supply bond, that's it, use this cool delegation feature, and validate with Lido. And with CSM, what is more important, even though it has nothing to do with the native DVT support, but you all know, guys, that DVT is a thing built on top of Ethereum validation. So in a way, you run DVT with your regular validator. You would be also able to do the same with CSM, but with all these benefits on top.
Okay, more questions? No? Yes.
I have a bit of a naive question, but I guess if you stake your ETH in this system, right, you don't have all the advantages of sort of staked derivatives, which you can then use for all sorts of other reasons, right? So could you give me a bit of a sense of like what is the advantage? Why would someone who doesn't really, I guess, care so much about the supporting altruistically the network or whatever to do this rather than just putting their ETH into a staking, yeah?
That's a great question, and yeah, the answer is pretty simple here. So yes, for sure, you can just take your ETH, stake it with Lido, delegate it to a professional node operators, and get your 3.5% APR or something like that. But as I've mentioned, in this, let me scroll back to this delegation picture, yeah. So you can take this 2 to 4 ETH and just stake it. But you can use it here as the collateral and get all this delegated stake on top and get fees on all this delegated stake that you operate, effectively increasing your APR compared to a regular STETH by 1.7 or even 2 times, depending on the size of the collateral you brought. So yes, you are losing this cool feature of STETH liquidity because your bond is locked as a security collateral now. But the returns or the APR will be up to 2 times or even more higher. So why would you go for it? Either if you are looking for a higher APR, or if you are looking for a contribution. If you want to really participate in the network, no one is saying that you need to run hundreds of validators. Imagine you have 32 ETH. So now what you can do with this 32 ETH, with the native staking, you need to lock all this 32 ETH. With CSM, you can lock only part of it, still be able to run a validator as an independent staker and still contribute to the network, while staking the rest, probably with Lido also, and using all these cool features of liquidity. So it allows you for a variety of options. And even if you go with this way, so taking 32 ETH, splitting in this way, this is staked, this is collateral, even in this case, your APR will be higher. So you will be able to run validator and contribute to the decentralization, which is super important. You will have all these benefits of liquidity. And on top, your APR will be higher. So it's a triple win situation, I would say.
Okay, more questions?
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.